Husband kicks out wife. 5 years later, she returns on a yacht with twins who look just like him. Emily Parker felt her legs weaken as Richard's shouts echoed through the mansion in the Ocean Gardens gated community in Newport Beach. Neighbors discreetly watched through their windows as the successful businessman threw his wife's suitcases onto the sidewalk under the heavy rain that night. "How you think I'm stupid?" Richard roared, waving her phone in his hand. 5 years of marriage and this is how you repay me? Texting another man. Emily tried to explain, her tears mixing with the rain soaking her face and clothes. The messages he'd found were about the surprise birthday party she was planning for him. That very morning she had received news that would change their lives forever. She was pregnant. "Richard, please let me explain. It's not what you think," she begged, trying to step closer. "I don't want to hear your lies." He cut her off, blocking her path. "You have 1 hour to grab the rest of your things and disappear from my life. If you're not gone, I'll call security." Heartbroken and with nowhere to go, Emily sought shelter at Mrs. Jenkins' house, the family's former housekeeper, who had always treated her like a daughter. The 68-year-old woman lived in a modest home in downtown Newport Beach and welcomed the young woman with open arms. "Sweetheart, you're soaked. Come inside and take a hot bath before you catch a cold," Mrs. Jenkins said, pulling her in. It was late at night when Emily, wrapped in an old robe that had belonged to Mrs. Jenkins' late daughter, finally managed to tell the housekeeper everything that had happened. "He wouldn't even let me explain, Mrs. Jenkins. The messages were about the surprise party I was planning for his birthday. I invited some friends and business partners for a special dinner at the Ocean View Bistro." Emily sobbed. The housekeeper stroked her damp hair. "And the worst part is," Emily hesitated, placing a hand on her still flat stomach, "I found out this morning that I'm pregnant. I was going to tell him at his birthday dinner." Mrs. Jenkins' eyes widened as she held the young woman's trembling hands. "Good heavens, child. And he threw you out in this rain? You must go back tomorrow when he's calmer and tell him about the baby." Emily shook her head. "You didn't see the look in his eyes, Mrs. Jenkins. It was pure hatred. He won't. Believe me, especially not now. He'll probably think the baby isn't even his." In the days that followed, Emily tried to contact Richard multiple times, but all her calls were blocked. She began experiencing frequent nausea, which worried Mrs. Jenkins, who insisted they see a doctor. "I'm fine, Mrs. Jenkins, it's just normal pregnancy symptoms," Emily argued, but the older woman's insistence won out. At the Newport Beach Municipal Clinic, the doctor performed an ultrasound and smiled as she showed the screen to Emily. "Look here, Mama, double the surprise, it's 2 babies." Emily couldn't hold back her tears. Twins. How would she explain this to Richard if he wouldn't even answer her calls? Determined to give it one last try, Emily decided to go in person to Richard's office in downtown Newport Beach. She put on her best outfit, gathered her courage, and took the bus to the corporate building where Parker Marine Enterprises was headquartered. When she arrived at reception, she was stopped by the secretary, a brunette who looked at her with disdain. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Parker, but Mr. Richard gave strict orders not to allow you into the company premises," the secretary said with a smug smile. "Please, it's urgent. I need to talk to him about something very important," Emily insisted. "He's in a meeting and can't be disturbed," the young woman cut in. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." Defeated, Emily was about to leave the building when she spotted Richard stepping out of the elevator with an elegant woman, Michelle, his executive assistant. They were holding hands, and he quickly kissed her on the lips before noticing his wife in the lobby. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Richard's expression was a mix of surprise and irritation. He whispered something to Michelle and walked toward Emily. "What are you doing here?" he asked in a low but hostile tone. "I needed to tell you something important, but I see you've already moved on," she replied, feeling tears well up. "We have nothing left to discuss, Emily. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce," he said coldly. At that moment, a wave of nausea hit Emily, and she rushed to the nearest restroom. When she came out, Richard had already left with Michelle. It was over. He had already replaced her, and their affair had clearly been going on for a long time. Overwhelmed by a mix of pain and determination, Emily decided she wouldn't tell Richard about the twins. If he didn't love her enough to even hear her out, he didn't deserve to know he was going to be a father. She would start her life anew, far away from him. That same afternoon, while checking her email, she found a message from Jennifer, her old college friend from business school. "Emily, it's been so long. How are you? I'm working at a marine company in San Diego, and we're looking for someone with your profile for the finance department. It'd be a great opportunity. Call me if you're interested." It was as if fate had shown her a path. With a heavy heart but resolve, Emily replied to the email, agreeing to learn more about the opportunity. It would be a new life for her and her children, far from the painful memories of Newport Beach. "Are you sure about this, dear?" asked Mrs. Jenkins when Emily shared her plans. "I am, Mrs. Jenkins. I can't stay here watching him with another woman, knowing he didn't even want to hear me out. My children deserve to grow up in peace, not in bitterness." 2 weeks later, Emily boarded a bus to San Diego, taking only a few clothes, and Mrs. Jenkins promised to visit as soon as the babies were born. Before leaving, she cut her long brown hair and dyed it blonde, a symbolic change for her new life. Coastal Ventures, the marine company where Jennifer worked, was run by Michael Thompson, a visionary businessman married to her friend. Upon learning of Emily's situation, the couple not only hired her, but also helped her find a small apartment near the office. "You have experience in financial management from your ex-husband's company, right?" Michael asked during the interview. "Yes, I worked there for 3 years before." Emily hesitated. "Before we got married, and he preferred I just take care of the house." "Well, here we value talent regardless of marital status," Michael smiled. "And from your resume, you have a lot to offer. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, the months flew by. Emily excelled at the company, bringing innovations to the finance department that quickly caught the board's attention. Her belly grew and she wore loose clothes to hide the pregnancy as long as possible, fearing the news might somehow reach Newport Beach. When she could no longer conceal it, Michael and Jennifer were understanding and allowed her to work from home during the final months of her pregnancy. "Don't worry about work, Em," Jennifer said as she helped her friend set up the nursery. "Your job will be waiting for you when you return." Michael was impressed with your results. One Saturday morning, at 7.5 months pregnant, Emily began feeling strong contractions. Jennifer rushed her to the hospital, where the doctors decided to perform an emergency C-section. Ethan and Noah were born small but healthy, with the same striking features as their father: intense green eyes and a dimple in their chins. Every time Emily looked at her sons, she felt a mix of deep love and sorrow for the absence of the father they would never know. The first few months were challenging. Caring for 2 babies alone demanded all her time and energy. With Jennifer's help and a nanny Michael hired as a bonus for her outstanding work, Emily managed to return to the office when the twins turned 4 months old. "You should see how much they've grown, Mrs. Jenkins," Emily said over the phone, speaking to the housekeeper who was now her only connection to Newport Beach. "And Richard, any news?" the older woman asked cautiously. Emily sighed. "None, and I prefer it that way. I only heard he married Michelle 6 months after I left. The divorce went through without me needing to appear since I didn't contest anything." What Emily didn't know was that Richard's life wasn't as perfect as it seemed. His marriage to Michelle lasted only a year, ending in scandal when he caught her with one of his business partners. His company was struggling financially due to failed investments, and his reputation in Newport Beach was tarnished after several public outbursts. Meanwhile, in San Diego, Coastal Ventures was growing exponentially, largely thanks to the financial strategies Emily had implemented. She was promoted to CFO when the twins turned 2. Michael Thompson, impressed by her talent, offered her a partnership when the boys turned 4. "You've turned Coastal Ventures into something far greater than I ever imagined, Emily," Michael said during a private meeting. "I want you to have 30% of the shares. You've earned it." Emily could hardly believe it. From a rejected wife to a partner in one of the largest marine companies in the South, her children were growing up happy and healthy with distinct but equally charming personalities. Ethan was more introspective and observant, while Noah had an adventurous and outgoing spirit. The only shadow in her life was the secret she kept. The boys often asked about their father, and she always told them he lived far away and couldn't be with them. Jennifer and Michael, whom the twins affectionately called uncle and aunt, helped fill that void, treating them like beloved nephews. Then, on an ordinary workday, fate intervened again. Emily was in her office when Michael walked in with an excited expression. "Emily, I have news that could completely change the course of Coastal Ventures. We've received a partnership proposal from the Parker Group in Newport Beach. They want to diversify after a financial crisis and are interested in our sustainable engine technology." Emily's blood ran cold. The Parker Group. Richard. "Michael, I don't think this is a good idea," she began, trying to keep her voice steady. "What do you mean?" "This is the opportunity we've been waiting for to expand into the Southeast." He looked confused. "Richard Parker himself is coming to San Diego next week for a preliminary meeting." Emily felt the ground drop beneath her. 5 years had passed since she left Newport Beach. 5 years building a new life, a new identity. Though she kept her maiden name on legal documents, professionally she was known only as Emily Thompson, using Michael's last name to avoid any connection to her past. "Is there something you're not telling me?" asked Michael, noticing her discomfort. After a long silence, Emily decided it was time for the truth, at least partially. "I know Richard Parker. I worked for him in Newport Beach before coming here," she said, omitting the marriage. "We didn't part on good terms, and I'd rather not be involved in this negotiation." Michael seemed to understand. "I see. In that case, I can handle the initial meetings alone. But you know that eventually, as CFO and partner, you'll have to participate in some way, right?" Emily nodded, resigned. "I just need time to prepare." That night, Emily barely slept. The memories she had buried came rushing back. How would she react to seeing Richard after all this time? Worse yet, how could she keep him from finding out about the twins? The week flew by, and soon the day of the meeting with Richard arrived. Emily asked to work from home, claiming the boys were slightly under the weather. Michael agreed, promising to call as soon as the meeting ended. When the phone rang late that afternoon, Emily answered with a racing heart. "How did it go?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Better than we expected," Michael replied enthusiastically. "Richard was impressed with our numbers and wants to move forward with the partnership as soon as possible. We scheduled another meeting in 2 weeks, but this time he wants to meet the entire executive team, including you, Emily." She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. "Are you sure I need to be there?" "Absolutely. In fact, he made an interesting proposal. He wants our team to visit Parker's facilities in Newport Beach before finalizing the deal. He suggested we use the company Yacht for the trip as a demonstration of their service quality. It'll be a full week there. A week in Newport Beach with Richard. It was her worst nightmare. "Michael, I can't leave the boys for that long," she argued, desperate for an out. "Actually, he suggested you bring them," Michael replied. "Apparently, he heard from an employee that you're a mother of twins the same age as his son and thought it would be good for the kids to have company during the stay. It'll be during their mid-year school break." His son? Richard had another son? The news took Emily by surprise. "I didn't know he had a son," she murmured. "Yes, he mentioned something about the boy living with his mother in Europe. Seems he doesn't see him often. Anyway, what do you think of the idea?" Emily realized she was cornered. Refusing would raise suspicions, both from Michael and Richard. She needed to buy time. "Let me think about it and get back to you tomorrow, okay?" After hanging up, Emily sat on the living room floor, watching Ethan and Noah play with their remote control cars, gifts from Uncle Michael. How could she stop Richard from seeing them and recognizing his own likeness in them? The solution came from where she least expected. The next morning, Jennifer showed up at her apartment with a worried expression. "Emily, Michael told me about the trip proposal. There's something you need to know." Jennifer showed her a business magazine on her tablet. On the cover was a photo of Richard with the headline, "Richard Parker starts anew after crisis. Businessman seeks new partnerships to save marine empire." "That's not what I wanted to show you," Jennifer said, swiping to an inside article. It's this. The piece detailed Richard's personal troubles, including his messy divorce from Michelle and rumors of an unrecognized son in Europe, the result of a relationship before his marriage to Emily. Apparently, the child's mother had recently filed a paternity suit, demanding a fortune in backdated child support. "Is this man Richard Parker? Your ex-husband?" Jennifer asked directly. Emily couldn't lie. She nodded silently. "And the twins." Jennifer didn't need to finish the sentence. "He never knew," confirmed Emily. "I found out I was pregnant the same day he kicked me out of the house." Jennifer sat beside her friend, holding her hand. "You need to tell him, Em. The boys have a right to know their father, and he has a right to know he has sons. After how he treated me, after 5 years without a single attempt to reach out," Emily was furious. "I'm not defending him," Jennifer clarified. "I'm thinking of the boys. And also," she hesitated, "if this rumor about his son in England is true, and he files for a DNA test for the twins, you could face legal trouble for hiding them." Emily had never considered that possibility. She was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Refusing the trip would raise suspicions. Accepting meant confronting Richard and possibly losing control of the situation. After much thought, Emily decided it was better to face it on her own terms. "I'm meeting with Michael next week," she told Jennifer, "and then I'll decide about the trip." The reunion with Richard was even harder than Emily had imagined. When she entered the meeting room at the hotel in San Diego, she felt his gaze lock onto her immediately. There was a moment of hesitation, as if he was trying to remember where he knew her from. Her appearance had changed significantly. Blonde, hair, stylish glasses, and she'd lost weight after the twins were born. Professionally, she was a completely different woman from the insecure young girl he'd once known. "Emily Thompson, our CFO and partner," Michael introduced, seemingly unaware of the tension in the air. Richard mechanically extended his hand, his eyes never leaving her face. "Thompson?" he repeated, frowning slightly. "Yes, Thompson," she confirmed, firmly shaking his hand briefly. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Parker. I've heard a lot about your ventures." The meeting proceeded with tense formality. Richard directed most of his questions to Michael, but his eyes kept drifting to Emily, as if trying to solve a puzzle. When the other executives had left, Richard approached her. "We've met before, haven't we?" he asked bluntly. Emily kept her composure, though her heart raced. "I worked briefly in Newport Beach before coming to San Diego," she replied vaguely. "At my company?" he pressed. "For a short time, yes, but that was years ago," she said, looking away as she pretended to organize some papers. Richard seemed about to ask more when Michael returned. "So, it's settled. We'll visit the facilities in Newport next month?" he asked cheerfully. Richard hesitated, still staring at Emily, before answering, "Yes, it's confirmed. I'll be there personally to welcome you." After he left, Michael turned to Emily with concern. "Is there something between you two I should know about?" Emily forced a smile. "Nothing important, just some past professional differences. It won't affect our partnership, I promise." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now back to the story. In the weeks before the trip, Emily considered every possibility. She could fake a last-minute emergency, conveniently fall ill, or simply confess everything to Michael and withdraw from Coastal Ventures. None of the options felt right. Jennifer, who now knew the whole story, offered a different perspective. What if this is the chance fate is giving? You to finally settle this once and for all. She suggested while helping Emily pack the boys' bags. Maybe it's time for the twins to meet their father, and for Richard to take responsibility. "What if he tries to take the boys from me?" Emily asked, voicing her greatest fear. "He wouldn't have any legal grounds for that, Em. You never prevented contact, he simply didn't know they existed. Besides, you're an exemplary mother, with a stable career and perfect conditions to raise them." Still unsure, but with no other options, Emily boarded the Coastal Ventures yacht with Ethan and Noah, heading to Newport Beach. The boys, now almost 5, were thrilled about the trip on the giant boat, as they called it. "Mummy, are we going to see where you lived before we were born?" Ethan asked during the trip as they watched the sea from the bow. "Yes, sweetheart." It's a very beautiful city with wonderful beaches, she replied, trying to keep her tone light. What about our dad? Does he live there too? Noah asked innocently. Emily's heart tightened. The boys rarely asked about their father, used to the vague answers they always received. Why now, of all times? Your father? She hesitated. Yes, he lives there, but I don't know if we'll see him during our visit. The twins' eyes sparkled at the possibility. Can we look for him, please, Mommy? Noah pleaded excitedly. We want to meet our dad, Ethan added. Emily hugged them both, fighting back tears. How could she explain the complexity of the situation to 5-year-olds? We'll see what happens, my loves. Now how about lunch? The chef made that pasta you love. The yacht docked in Newport Beach on a sunny Saturday morning. As arranged, Richard waited at the main pier, accompanied by some executives and a small local press team covering the arrival of the San Diego delegation as an important event for the city's economy. Emily took a deep breath, adjusted her navy blazer over her white blouse and light skirt, carefully chosen for the occasion, and took the boys' hands. They looked adorable in their light grey shirts and jeans, their blonde hair shining in the sun. Remember, you need to be on your best behavior, okay? This is very important for Mommy's work, she said, keeping her voice steady. Yes, Mommy? They chimed in unison, excited for the adventure. As they descended the yacht's ramp, Emily saw Richard's expression change instantly. His composed, professional gaze turned to pure shock at the sight of the two identical boys, holding her hands. The same green eyes, the same facial features, the same chin dimples. It was like looking at his own childhood photos. Richard took a step forward, then back, as if struck by an invisible blow. Camera flashes went off, capturing the moment for posterity, though the photographers had no idea of the encounter's true significance. "Welcome to Newport Beach," Richard managed to say finally, his voice hoarse with restrained emotion. "I hope the trip was pleasant." "It was wonderful," Michael replied, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "These are Ethan and Noah, Emily's boys. Boys, say hello to Mr. Parker." Well-mannered as always, the twins extended their little hands. "Nice to meet you, sir," Ethan said shyly. "Your boat is so big," Noah added in awe. Richard mechanically shook their hands, his gaze shifting between the boys and Emily, who kept her expression neutral, though her heart pounded so hard it felt ready to burst. How old are they?" Richard asked, trying to sound casual. "We'll be 5 in October," Noah answered promptly before Emily could intervene. "We're twins, you know." "But I was born 3 minutes before Ethan." Richard's face paled even more. October, exactly 9 months after he had thrown Emily out of the house. "Fascinating," he murmured, turning to the executives accompanying him. "Please show our guests to their accommodations. I'll join you shortly for lunch." As the group headed to the cars that would take them to the resort, Richard lightly grasped Emily's arm. "We need to talk," he whispered, "in private." "We have nothing to talk about, Richard," she replied firmly, pulling away from his touch. "We're here for business, nothing more." "Those boys," he began, but was interrupted by Ethan, who came running back. "Mom, Uncle Michael is calling. Let's go see the dolphins before lunch." Relieved by the interruption, Emily took her son's hand and quickly walked away, leaving Richard stunned on the pier. The morning passed with a tour of Parker Marine Enterprises facilities, followed by a tense lunch at the resort's restaurant. Richard barely touched his food, his eyes constantly seeking out the twins, observing every gesture, every smile, every familiar trait. The boys in turn seemed inexplicably fascinated by the businessman. "Why does that man keep staring at us, Mom?" Ethan asked quietly during dessert. "Maybe because you're the only boys here," Emily replied evasively. "He looks sad," Noah observed. "Can we go play with him later?" Emily choked on her juice. "No, sweetheart, he's a very busy man. Besides, we have that boat ride scheduled for this afternoon, remember?" After lunch, Richard finally managed a moment alone with Emily, while the other executives and the children prepared for the excursion. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked directly, his voice a mix of accusation and pain. Emily laughed bitterly. "Tell you? You threw me out in the rain, Richard. You blocked my calls, refused to see me when I went to your office. How exactly was I supposed to tell you? I was hurt. I thought you had betrayed me, he defended. And not for a second did you consider hearing my side, trusting the woman you spent 5 years of your life with. Emily shook her head. Besides, the day I went to your office, I saw you kissing Michelle. It was very clear to me who was really betraying whom. Richard ran a hand through his graying hair, visibly shaken. It was a mistake. I was confused. He hesitated. Look, I know I made a lot of mistakes, but we're talking about my sons. You had no right to hide them from me for 5 years. Your sons? Emily's voice rose dangerously. You lost any right to them the moment you chose not to trust me. I was the one who carried 2 babies alone for 9 months. I was the one who stayed up nights breastfeeding, tending to fevers, teaching them every word, every step. They are my sons, Richard. You're just a stranger who shares their DNA. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard seemed to have aged 10 years in that conversation. Do they know who I am? He finally asked in a low voice. They know their father lives in Newport Beach and can't be with them. I've never said anything more than that, Emily replied, calmer now. They have Michael as a father figure. He and Jennifer treat the boys like nephews. Richard closed his eyes for a moment. I want to acknowledge them, Emily, legally. I want to be part of their lives. That's not up for discussion right now, she cut in. We're here for business, and that's what I'll focus on in the coming days. As for the boys, any decision will need to be reviewed by lawyers, with their well-being as the top priority. Before Richard could respond, they were interrupted by Michael, who arrived with the twins already wearing life jackets. We're ready for the boat ride, he announced cheerfully. Come on, Richard, you promised to show us that cove with the dolphins yourself. With no choice, Richard followed the group to the small boat waiting for them, his mind swirling with unanswered questions. The tour around Newport Beach would have been enchanting under any other circumstances. The crystal-clear waters reflected the blue sky, while lush islands dotted the horizon. Ethan and Noah were ecstatic, pointing at every colorful fish that appeared near the boat. Look, Mom, that fish is blue, Noah exclaimed excitedly. And there's a yellow one over there too, added Ethan. Richard watched the boys' interaction with Emily, absorbing every detail, every smile, every little thing he had missed over the past 5 years. It felt like a chasm had opened in his chest. When they finally spotted the dolphins, the twins couldn't contain their excitement. They jumped around the boat, almost falling into the water a few times. Careful, boys, Emily warned, grabbing Ethan as he leaned dangerously over the edge. Instinctively, Richard rushed to hold Noah, who was doing the same on the other side. Easy there, champ, he said, holding the boy firmly. Dolphins are curious. They'll come closer if we stay still. Noah looked at him with admiration. You know about dolphins? He asked. I know a lot about the sea, Richard replied with a sad smile. I grew up in these waters. Cool. I want to learn everything about the sea too, Noah exclaimed. Right, Ethan. The other twin, more reserved, simply nodded, studying Richard curiously. Sir, do you have kids? Ethan suddenly asked. The question caught everyone off guard. Emily froze. Michael coughed awkwardly, and Richard looked straight at Emily before answering. He hesitated. Yes, I have children. How many? Ethan pressed. 2, Richard replied, still watching Emily. 2 wonderful boys. Do they live with you? The little interrogator continued. No, Richard shook his head sadly. Unfortunately not. They live far away. Like us, Noah concluded innocently. Our dad lives far away too. Mom said maybe one day we'll meet him. Emily quickly intervened. Boys, look, the dolphins are coming closer. She pointed to the opposite side of the boat, effectively diverting the children's attention. The rest of the ride was tense for the adults, though the twins remained oblivious, completely enchanted by the marine wonders. Back at the resort, Emily took the boys to rest before the formal dinner planned for that evening. As she helped them bathe, she couldn't stop thinking about the conversation on the boat and how things had spiraled out of her control. Mom, that man, the boat owner, Ethan began as she dried his hair. What about him, sweetheart? He looks like us, doesn't he? the perceptive boy observed. "He has green eyes like ours. And the dimple here," he pointed to his own chin. Emily felt a chill down her spine. How could she answer that? "Lots of people have green eyes and dimples, dear," she deflected. "But not like ours," Ethan insisted. "And he looks at us in a weird way." Before Emily could come up with another evasive answer, someone knocked on the door. It was Jennifer, who had arrived from San Diego that afternoon to join them. "Saved by the bell," Emily murmured to herself as she went to greet her friend. Jennifer swept in like a whirlwind, hugging her godchildren before pulling Emily aside. "It's happened, hasn't it? He's seen the boys," she stated, more than asked. "Yes, and it was exactly as I feared," confirmed Emily. "He wants to acknowledge them, to be part of their lives." "And would that be so terrible?" Jennifer asked gently. Emily didn't have time to answer as the twins came running to hug their godmother. "Aunt Jen, we saw dolphins today," Noah exclaimed excitedly. "And colorful fish," Ethan added. "How wonderful, my darlings," Jennifer replied, hugging them. "What else did you do that was interesting?" "We met a man who has eyes just like ours," Ethan said thoughtfully, "and he said he has 2 sons who live far away." Jennifer gave Emily a meaningful look, but Emily only shook her head slightly, silently asking her friend not to say anything. "How interesting," Jennifer replied vaguely. "Now, how about you two get ready for dinner? I heard there's ice cream. For dessert." As the boys searched their suitcases for their fancy clothes, Jennifer moved closer to Emily. "You won't be able to hide this for long," she whispered. "They're smart, they're already noticing the similarities." "I know," Emily admitted in defeat, "but I need to do this my way, in my own time. Richard can't just show up after 5 years and think he has rights." That night's dinner was a formal event held in the resort's main hall. Executives from both companies, local officials, and a few journalists were present to celebrate the future partnership between Parker, Marine Enterprises, and Coastal Ventures. Emily dressed the boys in identical navy blue suits, specially bought for the occasion. She herself wore an elegant blue dress, her blonde hair styled in a sophisticated updo. "You look handsome, my princes," she said, adjusting Ethan and Noah's little bow ties. "Remember, behave like the well-mannered boys you are, even if you're bored." When they entered the hall, all eyes turned toward them. The impeccably dressed twins were the perfect miniature image of Richard. Whispers started immediately, especially among the longtime residents of Newport Beach, who had known Richard since childhood. Richard, wearing a dark suit that accentuated his green eyes, approached the trio as soon as he spotted them. "You all look stunning," he remarked, his gaze shifting from Emily to the boys. "Ethan and Noah, you look like true gentlemen. Tonight?" The twins smiled shyly. "Thank you, Mr. Parker," Ethan replied politely. "You can call me Richard," he suggested with a kind smile. "Really?" Noah asked excitedly. "Mum said we have to be formal with adults at important events." "And she's absolutely right," Richard agreed. "But I'm making a special exception. For you two. If Mom allows it," he added, glancing questioningly at Emily. "It's fine, boys, you can call him by his name," she conceded, realizing it would be childish to refuse something so simple. Dinner was served, and to Emily's surprise, Richard proved to be extremely patient and attentive with the twins, helping Noah cut his meat and listening intently to Ethan's endless stories about dinosaurs, his favorite subject. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now continuing, during dessert, one of the local businessmen, visibly affected by wine, approached the table where Richard, Emily, and the twins were seated. "Wow, Richard, these boys look just like you," he exclaimed loudly enough for several guests to hear. "Why'd you hide having twin boys all these years, you sly fox?" An awkward silence fell over the table. The twins looked confusedly from the man to Richard, then to Emily, whose face had lost all color. "Mr. Mendez, I think you've had too much." "To drink?" Richard replied curtly. "I suggest you leave and rest for a while." But the damage was already done. Ethan, ever perceptive, tugged at Emily's dress sleeve. "Mom, why did that man say we look like Richard?" he asked quietly, but loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. Before Emily could formulate an answer, Noah added innocently, "Is it because he's our dad, the one who lives here in Newport Beach? The fork Richard was holding clattered loudly onto the plate. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. The entire table watched them, waiting for a response. "Boys, let's go back to the room," she finally said, standing up. "It's getting late." "But Mom, what about our dad?" insisted Noah, refusing to move. "Is it him?" He pointed at Richard. Richard looked at Emily, a silent plea in his eyes. She realized there was no escaping the situation now. "Yes, Noah," she answered at last, her voice barely audible. "Richard is your father." The silence that followed was broken by Michael, who quickly stood up. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we all need to give this family some privacy. Shall we move to the terrace for some after-dinner drinks?" Obediently, the guests began to rise and leave, some casting curious glances back. Jennifer stayed, positioning herself protectively beside Emily. The twins stared at Richard with a mix of confusion, curiosity, and astonishment. "If you're our dad, why did you never come visit us?" Ethan asked directly, his small face serious. Richard swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. "Your father didn't know about you, sweetheart," Emily interjected gently. "It was a misunderstanding between adults." "But now he knows?" Noah asked hopefully. "Yes, now I know," Richard confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'm very, very happy to meet both of you. Are you going to live with us now?" Noah continued. Emily quickly stepped in. "No, darling, your father lives here in Newport Beach and we live in San Diego, but I'm sure we can find a way for him to be more involved in your lives if he wants to." "More than anything in the world," Richard said sincerely. The boys seemed to process the information, their little faces cycling through various emotions. "Can we talk more about this tomorrow?" Richard suggested gently. No, this is a lot to take in all at once." To Emily's surprise, it was Ethan, the more reserved of the two, who first stood up and walked around the table. Stopping beside Richard, he solemnly extended his small hand. "Nice to meet you, Dad," he said formally, as if in an important business meeting. Richard felt tears welling up as he shook the tiny hand. "The pleasure is all mine, son." Noah, not wanting to be left out, impulsively ran over and hugged Richard. "I always wanted a dad," he exclaimed, clinging to his neck. Emily watched the scene with mixed emotions. On one hand, her heart warmed at the genuine joy on her children's faces. On the other, years of hurt and resentment couldn't be erased in one night. "Boys, let's go to the room now," she finally said. "We'll have all day tomorrow to talk more." Reluctantly, the twins said goodbye to Richard, who promised to see them at breakfast. As Emily headed toward the exit with the children, he called out to her, "Emily, we need to talk. After you put the boys to bed, meet me on the terrace." She hesitated, but eventually nodded briefly. 2 hours later, with the twins asleep under Jennifer's care, Emily made her way to the resort's terrace. Richard was already there, gazing at the nighttime ocean, a glass of whiskey in hand. "Thank you for coming," he said when he noticed her approaching. "We don't have much choice now, do we?" she replied, keeping her distance. "The secret is out." "Why, Emily?" he asked directly. "Why didn't you tell me when you found out you were pregnant?" She laughed humorlessly. "Have you forgotten how we split up? You accused me of cheating, threw me out of the house in a storm, blocked my calls, and when I tried to find you, I caught you kissing your assistant." Richard closed his eyes, shame evident on his face. "I made a lot of mistakes, I know that, but if I had known about the twins—" "What? Would you have acted differently?" Emily interrupted. "I doubt it. You didn't even bother to check if the messages you found were really incriminating. Did you know they were about the surprise party I was planning for your birthday?" She shook her head. "No, you chose to believe the worst about me, without giving me the benefit of the doubt after 5 years together." Richard stayed silent for a moment. "You're right," he finally admitted. "I acted like a complete fool. I let my pride and insecurities control me, and I lost the most precious things in my life, you and my children." She crossed her arms, still wary. "And Michelle? Didn't you two stay together?" "We got married 6 months after you left, yes," he confirmed. "It lasted just over a year. She was more interested in my money and status than in me, and she cheated with a business partner. Karma. Emily." remarked dryly. Richard didn't argue. "What do we do now?" he asked. "The boys know the truth. We can't turn back." Emily sighed, finally sitting in one of the terrace chairs. "I don't know, Richard. I spent 5 years raising them alone, building a life far from here. They have school, friends, a routine in San Diego. I can't just uproot everything. I'm not asking for that," he clarified. "But I want to be part of their lives. I want to make up for lost time. And how do you plan to do that? Visiting on weekends? Taking them on vacations here?" "To start, yes," he replied. "But I was also thinking—" He hesitated. "Coastal. Ventures and Parker Group are becoming partners. What if we expanded operations to San Diego? I could spend more time there, be more present in their lives." Emily looked at him in surprise. "You'd change your business for them?" "I'd change much more than that," Richard said firmly. "They're my children, Emily. I've already lost 5 years. I don't want to lose another day." She considered his words, trying to ignore the slight flutter in her heart. The Richard she'd known years ago would never have considered changing his life for anyone. "We'd need to set clear boundaries," she finally said, "and consult a lawyer to formalize things." "I completely agree," he replied promptly. "I'll do everything on your terms, Emily. I just want a chance to be a father to Ethan and Noah." "What about us?" she asked directly. "What do you expect?" Richard hesitated, visibly surprised by the question. "I'm not expecting anything beyond your willingness to let me know my children," he answered carefully. "What happened between us?" "Well, I know I caused irreparable damage with my actions. It'd be presumptuous of me to hope for reconciliation." Emily nodded, satisfied with the answer. Part of her, a part she'd buried deep years ago, still stirred at his presence, still felt that old connection. But 5 years of absence and hurt couldn't be erased in one night of confessions. "Let's take it one step at a time then," she proposed, standing up. "First the boys, the rest, well, time will tell." Richard stood too, keeping a respectful distance. "It's more than I deserve," he said sincerely. "Thank you, Emily." The next morning, the twins woke up bursting with excitement, chattering non-stop about meeting their real dad. Emily dressed them carefully, preparing them emotionally for the important day ahead. "Remember, boys, this is new for all of us, including your father," she explained while combing Noah's unruly hair. "He didn't know about you until yesterday, so we need to give him time to get used to the idea of being a dad." "But he seemed happy to meet us," Ethan argued. "And he's really cool," Noah added. "He knows everything about dolphins and boats." Emily smiled tenderly. "Yes, he does seem very happy, and that's wonderful. I'm just saying we need to take it slow, build this relationship step by step. Understood?" The two nodded, though their little faces still glowed with excitement. Richard was waiting for them at the resort's restaurant for breakfast. He had reserved a private table on the terrace with an ocean view and looked as nervous as a teenager on a first date. "Good morning," he greeted, standing up as soon as he saw them. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes," Noah replied eagerly. "I dreamed about dolphins." "I couldn't sleep much," Ethan admitted with his usual honesty. "I kept thinking of so many questions. To ask you, you." Richard smiled, gesturing for them to sit. "Call me whatever feels most comfortable, Ethan, and I'm ready to answer all your questions, if your mother allows it." "Only age-appropriate ones," Emily clarified as she sat down. "Naturally," Richard agreed before turning to the boys. "So what do you want to know?" The questions came like an avalanche. Where he lived, if he had pets, his favorite food, whether he could swim, if he liked dinosaurs, especially important to Ethan, if he had his own boat, if he knew Santa Claus. Richard answered each one patiently, visibly charmed by his son's curiosity and intelligence. Emily watched the interaction with mixed emotions. Relief that he seemed genuinely interested, fear of how this would affect the boys' routine, and a pang of nostalgia for what might have been if things had been different 5 years ago. After breakfast, Richard suggested a walk around the property. "There's a small aquarium at the resort with local species," he explained. "I thought the boys might like to see it." The twins were thrilled, and soon the 4 of them were strolling through the resort gardens toward the aquarium. To any observer, they looked like an ordinary family enjoying a vacation day. At the aquarium, Richard surprised Emily with his knowledge of local marine life, explaining each species to the boys with patience and enthusiasm. Ethan and Noah absorbed every word, asking questions and making comments that showed their sharp minds. "Did you like fish when you were little too?" Noah asked at one point. "Very much," Richard confirmed. "My dad used to take me fishing on the weekends, and I was always more interested in watching the fish than catching them. I ended up releasing everyone I caught, much to his dismay." "Our grandpa?" Ethan asked curiously. Richard glanced briefly at Emily before answering. "Yes, your father's father, your grandpa William. He isn't with us anymore, unfortunately. He would have loved to meet you both." "What about Grandma?" Ethan pressed. "My mother, Catherine, has lived in England for many years. I'll call her later today to tell her about you. She'll be overjoyed to know she has two such special grandsons." Emily felt a twinge of guilt. She had never considered the boys' extended family on their father's side. Catherine had always been kind to her during the marriage, despite living so far away. How would she react upon learning she had 5-year-old grandchildren whose existence she was completely unaware of? The day unfolded in a whirl of activities: lunch by the pool, an impromptu swimming lesson with Richard, and finally a sunset boat ride, just the four of them. During the ride, as the boys watched the sunset in awe from the deck, Richard approached Emily at the stern of the boat. "They're extraordinary," he said softly. "Smart, well-mannered, curious. You've done an amazing job, Emily." "Thank you," she replied, genuinely touched by the compliment. "It wasn't easy, especially at first." "I can imagine," he said, gazing at the horizon. "I spoke with my lawyer this morning. He's preparing the documents for official paternity recognition, retroactive child support, and everything else necessary." Emily turned to him, surprised. "Retroactive? That's not necessary, Richard. I've managed to support them just fine all these years. But it's my duty, Emily. I want to do this. In fact," he hesitated, "I'd like to set up an account for their education. College, study abroad, whatever they need for the future." "I've always planned for that," she replied defensively. "I know you have," Richard quickly added. "I'm not questioning your ability, it's just my way of making up for lost time." Emily nodded, understanding his need to contribute. "All right, we can discuss the details with the lawyers." An excited shout from Noah interrupted them. "Mom, Dad, come look, there are dolphins again." It was the first time Noah had called Richard Dad so naturally, and the effect was visible on the businessman's face, a mix of shock and deep emotion. Emily gently touched his arm. "Go," she encouraged softly. "Your sons are calling." The following days passed in a blur of activities, business meetings, and impromptu family moments. Richard completely rearranged his schedule to spend as much time as possible with the twins, while still fulfilling his professional obligations. The partnership between Parker Group and Coastal Ventures was officially sealed, with plans for significant expansion in San Diego. As Richard had suggested, he would spend at least 2 weeks a month in the city, personally overseeing the new office opening there. On the eve of their return to San Diego, Richard invited Emily and the boys to a special dinner at his home, an elegant seaside mansion in an exclusive Newport Beach community. "Wow, your house is huge!" Noah exclaimed as they arrived. "It has a pool and everything. It's bigger than our apartment in San Diego," Ethan observed, always attentive to details. The house was impeccably arranged, with fresh flowers in every room and a beautifully set table on the terrace, overlooking the bay lit by the evening lights. "I hope you like seafood," Richard said, leading them to the terrace. "I asked the chef to prepare the best dishes from the region." During dinner, the boys excitedly shared stories about their school in San Diego, their friends, and their favorite activities. Richard absorbed every detail, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest. "I swim 3 times a week," Noah said proudly. "My coach says I'm really good." "And I prefer chess," Ethan added. "I beat almost everyone in my class." After dessert, Richard suggested the boys explore the garden, where he had set up a small surprise, a professional telescope for stargazing. While the twins enjoyed the garden under the butler's supervision, Richard and Emily remained on the terrace, soaking in the view in a comfortable silence. "Emily," he finally began, "these days with you and the boys completely changed. My perspective on life. She looked at him cautiously without responding. I know I made unforgivable mistakes in the past, he continued, and I don't expect you to forgive me or forget everything that happened. But I want you to know that I'm a different man now, and I'll do everything in my power to be the best father possible for Ethan and Noah. I believe you, she replied sincerely. I've seen how you've interacted with them these past few days. They already adore you. A smile lit up Richard's face. They're extraordinary boys. Every minute with them makes me realize how much I've missed and how much I still have to learn. You've adapted well for someone who found out he was the father of twins less than a week ago, Emily remarked with a faint smile. It's easy when they're such special kids, he replied before hesitating, his expression growing more serious. Emily, there's something I need to ask you. Her heart raced, suddenly apprehensive. What? Do you think you could ever forgive me? I'm not talking about us getting back together or anything like that, he quickly clarified. But maybe in time we could be friends for the boys' sake? The question caught her off guard. For 5 years she had clung to resentment as a form of protection, a barrier against the pain he had caused. But seeing him now genuinely remorseful and committed to their children, Emily realized it might be time to let go of some of that burden. I think we can try, she finally answered. It'll take time, Richard, but for the boys, yes, we can work on building a friendly relationship. The relief on his face was palpable. That's more than I hoped for. Thank you. An excited shout from Noah interrupted the moment. Dad, Mom, come see, there are so many stars in the telescope. They both smiled and stood up at the same time, walking side by side to the garden where the twins eagerly waited to show their discovery. The next morning, the Coastal Ventures yacht was ready to sail back to San Diego. Richard accompanied the family to the harbor, his heart heavy with the impending separation, even though he knew it was temporary. Remember, I'll visit in 2 weeks as soon as I finish sorting everything out here, he said, kneeling to be at eye level with the twins. Promise? Noah asked, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I promise, Richard assured, him, hugging him tightly. And we'll video chat every day until then. Ethan, always more reserved, stepped forward shyly. I brought something for you, Dad, he said, handing over a carefully folded drawing. I made it last night. Richard unfolded the paper and felt his heart tighten. The drawing showed 4 stick figures, a tall one with long hair labeled Mom, 2 small ones labeled Ethan and Noah, and a tall one with short hair labeled Dad. All 4 were holding hands, with a big smiling sun above them. It's our family, Ethan explained seriously. Richard swallowed the lump in his throat, hugging his son with emotion. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever received. Son, I'll frame it and take it everywhere. After more hugs and promises, the boys boarded the yacht, leaving Emily and Richard alone for a moment. Thank you for everything, Richard, she said sincerely. The boys had wonderful days. Here, I'm the one who should thank you, Emily, he replied, for giving me this chance after everything. Impulsively, he took her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Emily nodded, returning the handshake, before walking up the ramp. On deck, she joined the twins, who were waving frantically at their father. As the yacht pulled away from the harbor, Richard remained on the pier, waving until the boat was just a dot on the horizon. Her heart was torn between the sadness of farewell and the joy of a promise for a fresh start. In San Diego, life resumed its normal rhythm, though with one significant difference. Richard was now part of the routine, even from a distance. He video-called the boys every night, sent gifts and letters, and counted the days until his first visit. True to his word, 2 weeks later he arrived in town, staying at a hotel near Emily Parker's apartment. Weekends soon became filled with family activities, beach outings, museum visits, and picnics in the park. Emily watched Richard's transformation with a mix of surprise and admiration. The arrogant, self-centered man she had known years ago was giving way to a caring, devoted father who spared no effort to make up for lost time. Gradually, without them even noticing, a new dynamic began to form between them. Conversations about the boys evolved into other topics. Past memories were revisited with fresh perspectives, and resentment gave way to deeper mutual understanding. One Sunday afternoon, while the twins played in the park under Jennifer and Michael Thompson's supervision, Richard and Emily strolled side by along the shore, enjoying a rare moment of peace. "I never imagined my life would take this turn," he remarked, gazing at the ocean. "If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be here today, walking calmly with you, after discovering I have 2 wonderful sons, well, I would have laughed at how absurd it sounded." "Life is full of surprises," Emily agreed. "Not always good ones, but sometimes fate has a peculiar way of fixing its own mistakes." Richard stopped walking and turned to face her. "Emily, I know we agreed to take things slow, to build a friendship for the boys' sake, but I need to be honest with you." She stopped too, suddenly uneasy. "What is it?" "These months spending time with you and the boys made me realize something I might have always known but was too proud to admit." He took a deep breath before continuing. "I never stopped loving you, Emily. Even in the darkest moments when hurt and wounded pride clouded my judgment, deep down, the love remained." Emily felt her heart race, conflicting emotions warring inside her. "Richard, I'm not asking for anything," he gently interrupted. "I just wanted you to know. I completely understand if your feelings for me aren't the same anymore, or if they've turned into something entirely different. I just owed you and myself this honesty about what we once had." She stayed silent for a moment, processing his words, trying to sort through her own tangled emotions. "I don't know how I feel, Richard," she finally admitted. "There are moments when I look at you with the boys and feel that old connection, that sense that we belong together. And then there are times when the memory of the pain is still so vivid." "I understand," he said without pushing. "I don't expect an answer, Emily. I just wanted you to know." They continued walking in silence, each lost in their own thoughts, until they spotted the twins running toward them, their faces bright with joy. In the following weeks, Richard became a more frequent presence in San Diego, personally overseeing the opening of Parker Marine Enterprises' new office in the city. The partnership with Coastal Ventures flourished, bringing financial benefits to both companies. The twins thrived with their father's constant presence in their lives. Ethan, always more reserved, began opening up, sharing his complex thoughts and ideas with Richard, who listened with genuine interest. Noah, naturally outgoing, developed new skills under his father's patient guidance, especially in swimming. Emily watched this transformation in her small family with a mix of joy and apprehension. Part of her still feared it was all temporary, that Richard might eventually grow tired of family life and return to his old ways in Newport Beach. On an ordinary Saturday, while the 4 of them enjoyed a day at the beach, Ethan suddenly had a severe asthma attack, triggered by running too long in the sand. His face turned pale, his lips slightly blue as he desperately gasped for air. "Where's the inhaler?" Emily asked in panic, rummaging through the beach bag. "It's not here," she answered herself, horrified as she remembered she'd switched bags that morning and likely left the medication at home. Richard acted with surprising speed. He scooped Ethan into his arms and ran to the car parked near the beach. "Hospital now!" he shouted, already settling the boy in the back seat. Emily and Noah hurried in and Richard drove like never before, reaching the hospital in record time. In the emergency room, Ethan was immediately treated, given oxygen and medication to open his airways. During the agonizing hours of waiting, Richard remained steady, alternating between comforting Noah, who cried in fear, and supporting Emily, who blamed herself for forgetting the inhaler. "Don't blame yourself," he said, holding her hand. "This could happen to anyone. What matters is we acted fast, and he's getting good care." When they finally saw Ethan, stabilized and breathing normally, the boy managed a weak smile as his parents entered the room together. "Sorry for ruining beach day," he murmured. "You didn't ruin anything, champ," Richard assured him, carefully sitting on the edge of the bed. "Just gave us quite a scare." "But everything's fine now," Emily added, leaning down to kiss her son's forehead. "The doctor said you can go home tomorrow." Noah, who had been unusually quiet, timidly approached his brother's bed. "I brought your favorite book," he said, placing a worn copy of The Little Prince on the bed. "Thought maybe you'd want to read it here." Ethan smiled at his twin, a silent thank you for the gesture. "How about I read to both of you?" Richard suggested, "like we do at bedtime." The boys eagerly agreed, and soon Richard began reading, his deep voice filling the hospital room with the adventures of the little prince and his rose. Emily watched the scene with her heart overflowing. Fear for what could have happened, gratitude for how quickly Richard had acted, and something else, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel fully in a long time. When the boys finally fell asleep, Richard quietly closed the book and stood meeting Emily's gaze. "You stayed," she said simply. "What do you mean?" "Through the whole crisis, you stayed. You didn't panic, didn't give up, didn't run. You acted like a real father." Richard looked puzzled. "Of course I stayed. They're my kids, Emily. There's nowhere else I'd rather be." It was in that moment, in a hospital room at 3 in the morning, that Emily finally understood just how much Richard had changed, and how much she had changed too. The hurts of the past, though still there, began to fade in the face of the man he'd become. Ethan was discharged the next morning with a new prescription for preventive medication and orders to avoid intense exercise for a few weeks. Richard insisted on staying at Emily's apartment to help with his care, sleeping on the living room couch in case of any nighttime emergencies. What began as a temporary arrangement stretched on, first a week, then 2, until a month had passed, and he was still there, an integral part of their family routine. Richard's belongings began gradually migrating from the hotel to the apartment, first some clothes, then books, the laptop, until his presence became a constant. The twins flourished with both parents always around, showing significant improvement at school and developing new skills. Ethan, inspired by his father's example, began taking an interest in business and economics, while Noah discovered a passion for the ocean that went beyond swimming, becoming fascinated with marine biology and environmental conservation. One evening, after putting the boys to bed, Richard found Emily on the apartment balcony, gazing at the city lights. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, approaching cautiously. "How unpredictable life is," she replied with a soft smile. "A year ago, we were practically strangers. Me building my career and raising our children alone, you struggling to keep your business afloat in Newport Beach, both of us on completely separate paths." "And now?" he asked hesitantly. Emily turned to face him, her eyes shining in the moonlight. "Now we're here sharing a couch that's too small for you, making breakfast together, helping the boys with homework, laughing at inside jokes, living like a family, even though we never planned it." Richard swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment. "That's what we are, Emily. A family. Maybe not conventional, maybe not planned this way, but a family all the same." "Do you know what Ethan asked me yesterday?" she said, a playful smile on her lips. "He wanted to know why you sleep on the couch when there's room in my bed." Richard laughed, though his cheeks turned slightly pink. "And what did you say?" "The truth, that we're friends, co-parents, business partners, but not a couple." He seemed to accept it, but then added that we could be a couple if we wanted to. According to him, we already act like one. A silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. "And you?" Richard finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. "What do you think?" Emily closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to fully feel all the emotions she had kept in check these past months. "I think I'm afraid," she admitted, "afraid to trust again, afraid of getting hurt, afraid of hurting each other. But also," she hesitated, "I also feel like maybe we're being given a second chance, one we didn't expect, but maybe one we deserve." Richard took a step forward, closing the distance between them, but still not touching her. "Emily, I've changed. I'm not that arrogant, insecure man who hurt you so deeply. These months with you and the boys have transformed me, made me see what really matters in life." "I know," she replied softly. "I see it every day, in how you treat the boys, how you respect my space, how you've become an essential part of our lives." "So," he hesitated again, his heart beating unevenly, "can we try? We don't have to rush anything. We can take it as slow as you want. But I'd like to at least try to build something new with you. Not just for the boys, but for us." In response, Emily took the final step that separated them, and for the first time in over 5 years, willingly stepped into Richard's arms. The embrace felt like coming home after a long journey, familiar and new all at once, comforting and thrilling. "Let's try," she whispered against his chest, "one day at a time." In the weeks that followed, Richard and Emily began rebuilding their relationship, this time on stronger foundations, mutual respect, open communication, and a shared commitment to the family they had created. The twins watched this evolution with barely concealed delight, often making plans that included all 4 of them together on future adventures. On a Sunday morning, 6 months after their reunion at the Newport Beach Harbor, the 4 of them walked along the beach at dawn, the boys running ahead, searching for shells in the sand, while Richard and Emily followed a few steps behind, hand in hand. "You know what I realized," Richard remarked, watching their sons fondly. "Everything that happened, all the mistakes and the triumphs, brought us exactly where we were meant to be." Emily squeezed his hand gently. "What do you mean?" "If we hadn't separated in such a painful way, if I had known about the twins from the beginning, maybe we'd still be the same people we were before. Me, obsessed with business, you, living in my shadow. Maybe we never would have grown the way we did apart." She considered his words, recognizing the truth in them. "You're right. I would never have discovered my talent for business, never have become as independent and confident as I am today. And you, I'd probably still be that arrogant, self-centered man, unable to appreciate what truly matters," he finished. "I had to lose everything to learn how to value what I have." Emily smiled, watching the twins now building a small sandcastle. "So in the end, maybe everything happened exactly as it was supposed to." "With one exception," Richard added, stopping to face her. "I should have trusted you that day, Emily. I should have listened to you, given you the benefit of the doubt. That's the only thing I'd change if I could go back in time." She touched his face softly. "The past can't be changed, Richard, but the future is in our hands." Just then, Ethan and Noah came running toward them, their faces glowing in the morning sun. "Mom! Dad! Come see what we found!" Noah called excitedly. "It's a live starfish," Ethan added. "We have to return it to the ocean before it dries out." Smiling, the two followed their sons to the water's edge, where a small orange starfish had been washed ashore. Carefully, the 4 of them returned, it to the sea, watching as it slowly sank into the crystal-clear water, returning home. "Just like us," Richard murmured, wrapping an arm around Emily's shoulders as they gazed at the horizon. "Finally, back where we belong." A month later, in a simple beach ceremony with only their closest friends as witnesses and the twins as ring-bearers, Richard and Emily renewed their wedding vows, not as a continuation of the past, but as the start of something new. A family rebuilt, stronger and wiser from their experiences. The Coastal Ventures yacht, now renamed New Beginning, swayed gently anchored near the shore, decorated with white flowers and blue ribbons, ready to take them on a honeymoon trip along the San Diego Islands with the twins as their adventure companions. Because some stories don't end with the traditional happily ever after. Some need detours, pain, and separation to make the reunion even more meaningful. And some families need to lose their way before finally finding their path back to each other. End of story. If this tale of new beginnings and forgiveness touched your heart, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel. Tell us, in the comments, do you think Richard deserved this second chance? We can't wait to hear your thoughts and share more heartfelt stories with you.